presentation and the speaker at one time. It's just easier to see the speaker and follow along with the presentation at the same time. During the presentation, you will be able to post questions. You can post questions in the chat all the way at the bottom. In the bottom panel, it says chat. It looks like, I don't think there's been anything here yet, but I will say hello in case you aren't familiar. This is where you'll be able to post questions throughout the presentation. And after the presentation, we'll take a few minutes to have some questions answered. After the Q&A, there will be a Zoom session that will remain open that will allow everyone to continue the conversation and continue exploring the topic if you choose to do so. Shortly after the session, either this evening or tomorrow, you will receive an evaluation of the session. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be really great. We'd love to hear how we've been doing on these sessions. And now I will pass the virtual microphone over to Chris Berry.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the invitation to partner with John Carroll and Scott and the team at the business school on this. And really excited to hear from Mike. I've had the opportunity to hear from Mike speak a number of times, and it's incredibly engaging and very insightful. But to start, I'm Chris Berry, president of OhioX. OhioX, we're a statewide technology and innovation partnership. We're a nonprofit organization, and our growing membership ranges from Fortune 500 companies to startups, hospitals, universities, including John Carroll, tech firms, software shops, and more. But it's really a community that's been built of companies, of leaders, of individuals that all are united and have this belief that Ohio can be a really powerful force with technology and innovation, and we can be a pretty powerful ecosystem in our cities and our state as a whole. So we're incredibly thankful to the partnership and to be working with Scott and so many others throughout the year. And so thank you so much for hosting me today. If you're interested in learning more about OhioX, you can just go to www.ohiox.org. Every week we send out an email. That's a good place to read about Ohio tech news, weekly updates, jobs, events, and more. So thank you so much. But without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Mike Walker. Mike is the Senior Director of Applied Innovation Team at Microsoft. Mike is a renowned entrepreneur and global strategic advisor who brings paradigm-shifting digital transformation through emerging technologies. Across a diverse set of industries, Mike has provided high-impact and pragmatic advice to hundreds of Fortune 500 CEOs, CIOs, CTOs across the globe. And at Microsoft, Mike partners with business and technology executives to advise them on how to maximize their current business while also aiding in the identification of new business models that leverage emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, AR, VR, MR, and blockchain. Previously, Mike had worked at Gartner as Vice President of Technology Innovation Research, where his thought leadership is reflected in over 150 published research notes and over 4,000 client engagements. His background also includes positions as a chief architect, innovation leader, and strategic advisor within Fortune 500 companies. But Mike, thank you so much for sharing your work with us, and incredibly excited to hear what you have to say tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And, that wasn't a mouthful at all, was it? Very good. All right, guys. So today what we're going to talk about is the business of digital transformation. And hopefully you guys switched over to the video. So because we're going to show this full screen here for all of you. And I'm going to skip past my bio there. You guys can have this at the end after we do this session. I'll give it to all the folks that can disseminate this out to everybody. But today, what we want to talk about is three core things. One, why you must stay vigilant with digital transformation now more than ever. Second, it's one thing to understand why you should care about it, but what are some of the trends that are happening this year and beyond? And then third, what are the digital transformation approaches and tools that you need to know about? And so we're going from why you should care to what are the opportunities to now how you can solve this particular problem. And so it's good to start with the core challenge. And the core challenge here is that the business landscape has dramatically changed. And so we've gone from the era of the past 30, 40, 50 years where our businesses were fairly linear. They were compartmentalized. They were what you would refer to as two-sided, meaning there's a buyer and there's a consumer. But that model is quickly eroding. And the business model of yesterday is not going to carry you through to tomorrow. And so it's important that you understand what are some of those key paradigm shifts. And one of those paradigm shifts is that corporate vitality is plummeting. And what I mean by that is if you look at this graph here, the average company, its essentially lifetime has gone from an average of 60 years down to just 15 years. And we see this every day with companies like Sears and others that are suffering because they were not able to change fast enough. And so if we look at what is working, well, VC backed companies are 51.9% more successful and are getting more net returns than a traditional Fortune 500 company. And so some of this is actually not the business model, but they're actually changing the rules of the game. And so if you look at perhaps a bank, if a bank wasn't making a profit in a couple years, that bank would no longer exist. But you've got companies like Facebook and Google and others that go 7, 8, 9, 10 years without making a profit. So the measures of what is valuable has significantly changed. And it has shifted from traditional things like assets to data as the new currency. And so if we look at going into a time machine, and so you'll find that I will be full of pulp culture 80s references here. But if you go into your DeLorean, you go 88 miles an hour and you go back 10 years, what you're going to find, the landscape 10 years ago looks very different than what it looks today. The top 10 companies based on market capitalization, there are oil and gas companies, there are financial services companies, there's telco companies, and there's one company, a little company called Microsoft that's on the list. Now, if you fast forward 10 years to today, the list is completely different. And what you're finding here is that these are all companies that are digital first companies, that their currency is largely assetless. It is a as a service model, or the newer term to use is it's a platform business model where the markets in which they're creating are multi-sided, meaning the buyer seller relationship has completely broken down. And now we've got other roles where, let's say, like Amazon, where you have a buyer and seller. That buyer, as a consumer, is now generating data that Amazon can now monetize. And now you've got data brokers and aggregators that are making profit off of that. And then you as a consumer can do new and interesting things as well. And so the model is much, much more dynamic now. And so this list will continue to evolve. Already you see as of this year, Johnson & Johnson is not on the top 10 list. This was actually a 2019 top 10 list. But this illustrates for you that we're seeing a extremely rapid change in the business landscape. And a lot of this is, like I said, it's about creating these new markets. It's not about optimizing an existing market. So, the example that I've pulled out here is Airbnb. And I think this highlights for us essentially, it emphasizes the point around no assets. They're assetless. And so if I'm Hilton or Marriott and I'm valuated at around 25, 26 billion respectively, and you've got Airbnb that's 32, 33 billion, and you want to go into a new market, well, these other companies, they've got to build hotels Airbnb doesn't have to do that. They're going to go and leverage the existing assets within that environment. So they are much, much more agile and nimble than, let's say, a traditional hospitality firm. And so the model has changed. We see this time and time again. Apple, Netflix, how it has completely changed the online streaming market, etc. And one of the things that's really important for us to understand today is the back end supply chain, which has been largely extremely linear. It's been compartmentalized where data has been locked away into individual silos across these companies. And what that has done is it's made our supply chain extremely brittle and fragile. We see that today with all the current events, whether it be a global pandemic or it be a trade war or any random set of geopolitical issues, taxation issues, etc. And so the idea here is when we look to digitize this, now we've got IoT sensors everywhere. We've got the environments creating all this new data. We've got new interoperability options. We've got ubiquitous connectivity with new versions of Wi-Fi and 5G, etc. And we've got really great algorithms that can really create net new insights for us that we didn't have before. And so the Petri dish on the right-hand side shows a flattening of those chevrons. So if you're familiar with like a Porter's model, a five forces model, what you'll see here is that type of thinking is breaking down really, really quickly here in this new world where now these services and this data is now being orchestrated because what is happening in this new digital realm is that it's being disintermediated, meaning that the middleman is being taken out of the loop and it's being distributed across the ecosystem itself. And so if you talk to business leaders, what they'll tell you is that, 85% of them say that if they don't offer digital services, they will be irrelevant. And this is really important for all of us to understand because when I talk to senior leaders, whether it be chief digital officers or CEOs or board of director level folks, what they're telling me is there is a heightened sense of anxiety that on one side you've got big companies like the high tech companies like a Google, like a Facebook, like an Amazon that is threatening their business model, and they can see that. On the other end of the spectrum, they've got all of these startups that are starting to chip away at their business as well, because the barrier to entry for innovation has gone way down. Before, it was all about capital, being able to have access to the right VCs and people, etc. Now, that's not necessarily the case. And so let's shift over because we could talk about the business side for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours alone. But since we've got a limited time together, let's shift over to the trends that you need to keep an eye on. And keep in mind, we're going to go pretty fast and you'll be able to have these slides here to reference later. But first, what I want to leave you with this first key trend is the democratization of artificial intelligence. And this is a big one, and it encompasses lots of technologies, whether that be artificial intelligence, platform as a service, whether that be autonomous agents and things that range from drones to vehicles to flying cars to robotics, lots and lots of different things. And when we talk about the democratization, what we mean is access to these AI technologies, meaning that there is more and more that's being pushed open source. There's more and more of this AI technology that's offered as a platform as a service, which means you don't have to procure a server and install the software. The models are ready to go. And all you need is the data and to train that data. Also, what it means is there is development languages like AutoML that will create AI algorithms for you. And so there is also a level of automation here around this. And so it's going to take three different types of forms, this democratization. There's going to be a level of autonomy from you kind of assisting that AI, and that's perfectly fine. And there's some that it's completely warranted that you would want to assist that AI. We see a lot of this on factory floors where a lot of the kind of mundane tasks are taken care of by the automation, but where there's intervention needed, that's where the human comes in. And a lot of this, keep in mind, before you get to full autonomy, it's not human assisted and then full autonomy. There's a lot in between. So a lot of the thoughts around the robots are going to steal all of our jobs and all that, I don't think that's realistic here in the near term, in the next 20, 30 years. Who knows what's going to happen past that? I mean, the crystal ball has never worked for people in the technology world. So I'm not even going to attempt to try. Um, you also will have various levels of intelligence that will be baked into the AI as well. From things that are very static, or as I put, dumb, meaning that it's kind of and procedural, and that's okay, because maybe it only needs to handle certain pieces of the workload for a variety of different reasons. But also, you go all the way to the other end of the spectrum where you have things like swarm intelligence, where now you have intelligence not just with one robot, but now you have intelligence that is gathered across many robots. And a great example of this is if you've seen light shows with drones. That is an example of where the algorithms are coordinating across all of those drones in the sky to create some sort of visualization. The military is using that for a variety of different purposes, whether it's ethical or not. But there's lots of different uses for that style of autonomy and intelligence. And then there's coordination, and that's around how coordinated are these devices across the spectrum. And so what we're seeing is that democratization is going to help you go across the spectrum to figure out for your particular solutions what makes the most sense for you. Now, another thing to think about is AI is everywhere. Um, I can't name names here, but you do see the original manufacturer here at the bottom of this image. This is a true story. There are cameras and mannequins at certain stores that are looking at your face and your gestures, and they're determining uh, what you think about that suit or that dress that's on that mannequin. And if you have a look of disgust on your face and you run in the opposite direction, they know essentially why, because they've looked at your face and they can essentially say, okay, this is how this person felt about this piece of merchandise. And because there's iBeacons in the store and you've got a mobile device in your pocket with their loyalty app, they can now communicate with you and say, hey, don't run away. Go over to this department. We know you like these things. Why don't you go over there and we'll give you 10% off of that piece of merchandise? This is being applied in lots of different settings, from retail to even education, to understand kind of student educational consumption and how they are learning, etc. This is a hotel in Nagasaki, Japan. Um, it is a real hotel. It is fully automated by robotics and AI. Um, if you speak English, at least American English, you have to go over to the Velociraptor over there on the right hand side. I was quite surprised that was my only option when I went there. But it's really interesting. Even in the hospitality industry, we're seeing that this form and essentially pervasiveness of robotics is permeating in these sectors. And we see this in the U.S. Hilton is doing similar things with robots that look more like Jane from the Jetsons, or no, Rosie from the Jetsons. Um, at least we think she's not a robot. Who knows? Anywho, Rosie very much Rosie, kind of like where it will take your luggage to your room. It will deliver room service to your room. And so we're just going to see more and more of this. And culturally, you'll see different types of implementations. The second is digital ecosystems. And we talked a little bit about this earlier when we talked about kind of the business landscape changing and evolving to be more ecosystem based. And there's some very specific technologies that are fueling this trend. One of the big ones is blockchain. And a lot of times when people think of blockchain, they think of cryptocurrency, but there is actually a lot of uses of blockchain that are non-crypto based. And what blockchain is really allowing us to do is it's allowing us to have very secure communications because that protocol is based on AI algorithms. Two, it's all about mastering information. Some of the biggest problems in business are actually not the integration, but the aftermath of the integration, meaning that there's bad data that goes across the lines, and we spend billions of dollars cleaning up this data. Also, technologies like knowledge graphs that's able to pull information together in new and interesting ways. IoT platforms. So it's not just the IoT device, the sensor in a car or a room or what have you, but it's also the collective nature of those IoT devices and having platforms that are able to coordinate all that activity. And lastly, digital twins. Digital twins, to keep it really, really simple, are essentially a digital representation of something. It could be of people, it could be of objects, it could be of buildings. We even see it in cities. Cities like Singapore or Beijing or Dubai have created entire digital twins of cities and can run simulations of things like traffic, like what happens if there's a huge storm that goes through the city and these certain events happen, what happens to our traffic as a result. So there's lots of really, really interesting use cases there. So if you listen to folks like McKinsey or Gartner, what they're telling you is essentially this is going to be the new normal, in that across every single industry that they're looking at and us as Microsoft are looking at, this is the new paradigm, especially now, especially as the world is becoming more and more connected. And keep in mind, ecosystems have always existed. I mean, I spent the early part of my career in banking where, the kind of the first incarnations of ecosystems were developed around ATM networks and correspondent banking and things along those lines that were precursors to things like cloud computing. And so these existed. It's just the technology was pretty horrible. It was using, green screen terminals to get at data. Now we've got even more data than we know what to do with, and we've got the ability to reach into these very powerful devices that are in everybody's pockets. And as a result of these ecosystems, we're seeing that all these X economies are being booted up, whether you want to call it the sharing economy. There is a gig economy that is vibrant and is really going wild at this point. There's what we refer to as the peer-to-peer economy, or the on-demand economy, or the data economy. All of these have one thing in common, and that's they are platform business models based on digital ecosystems, and they're multi-sided. The value that they're creating is very different from what we have looked at as valuable before. It's all about leveraging the trifecta, what I call the golden trifecta of technologies, which is AI, blockchain, and IoT. And they're able to get um, deterministic and probabilistic, most importantly, results based on AI algorithms to let us know uh, essentially things that we didn't even ask that we should know. And it's because the current model doesn't scale. because most things require some sort of middle person to coordinate those activities. Um, Edge computing is not supported very well. Our data is in a very poor state, and uh, it's fragmented, and it's in silos across various different organizations in the supply chain. And so this is the official definition of a digital ecosystem. We don't have time to go through the specifics here because we've got a lot to talk about in a short period of time. But I wanted to show you that, some of the key things to look at here is that it's all about the connections. It's meant to be self-organizing. It's meant to be dynamic and adaptive, and it's meant to break down barriers. And there is not just one technology at play here. It's a combination of technologies. And this is more of a architectural style rather than a single technology that's driving this. And lastly, blockchain as one of the key technologies, we see that with these digital ecosystems, it's leveraging this technology. However, it's going to be a slow burn. You can see here over the next 5 years, we see 176 billion of business value. But really, where the momentum really starts to happen is by 2030, where we see 3.1 trillion unlocked value for this. And so a lot of this will be a slow burn because a lot of this requires a coordination of many businesses to come together to join those ecosystems. Third, DIY biohacking. And so this can be everything from augmented reality and smart fabrics that are not very intrusive to things that are extremely intrusive, like brain computer interface. So if you talk to Elon Musk, he's going to tell you all about two-way brain interfaces and how that's going to be part of the next wave of emerging technologies. And then there's everything in the middle, from contact lenses to tattoos to devices that you implant in yourself, but also gene hacking. So CRISPR and other types of methods. And so Gartner predicts that Elon Musk's business, that whole market, is going to be worth around 1.73 billion here over the next few years. I mean, that's huge. And what you see there is a real contact lens. That's my finger. And that is a augmented reality contact lens that you can connect the contact lens to your phone and actually project augmented reality. So that was a Google X Labs device. Samsung and Sony have contact lenses where you can take pictures and even record video through a contact lens. So the creepy factor has gone way up, or the corporate espionage has gone way up. And so, like I said, there's lots of different implementations. This is GE with an augmented reality HoloLens. Not quite as creepy, when people are in a augmented reality state. The fourth big trend here is all around your environment around you being essentially computing around you. And so I call this transparently immersive experiences. And what that's all about is it's about technology blurring into the background and us not really being aware of the technology that's there. And so more and more are we seeing our homes become smarter, our buildings smarter, our cities smarter, our vehicles smarter, that are just doing things on our behalf. And sometimes we forget, sometimes we don't even realize these things are happening. And so we're going to start to see screens in more places than we would expect. We're going to expect more concerns around data privacy and how to handle that data, because there is so much being generated around us. And so some of those technologies, like I mentioned connected home, the smart workplace. We're going to have more and more AI algorithms that's pushed to the edge and is going to be computing AI there instead of just in the cloud. We're going to have things like self-healing devices and AI. Our displays are going to be different, but also 4D printing is coming around the corner as well. And if you're not familiar with 4D printing, a lot of people ask me, what that is. Essentially, it's a 3D printed thing that is dynamic in nature. And so a great example of this is 3D printing human tissue. And so if you go into the pharmaceutical space, I would imagine, especially now, um, shortening the timeframes to get drugs to market hits the bottom line. That's, billions and billions of dollars. So instead of testing on a doggy, kitty, bunny, mouse, etc., you could actually replicate and 3D print human tissue and test on that. And so the applications, both from a research perspective and from a technology perspective, are quite beneficial. And this all leads to a fundamental context switch. The switch going from what it used to be, what I grew up with, where the system, I had to adapt to the computer, to the system itself. Now that equation has flipped. Now it's the device that is starting to adapt to the human. And so we're seeing this more and more as our virtual assistants start to get more useful and less kind of gadgety and toy-like, and actually give us very powerful insights. And so if anybody saw the Apple announcement the other day, you could see those types of investments from big tech firms in the consumer space that are building devices that are extremely dynamic, that are handing off to others, that are coordinating, etc. What is smart dust? Smart dust is nanotechnology. And nanotechnology is rapidly evolving, and we see there's some problems with nanotechnology. Some of the problems are the waste that it creates, and that could actually kill you. But we actually saw a couple years ago the first human trial of smart dust or nanotechnology, where it delivered the cancer treatment drugs to the cancer cells themselves instead of what we do today, which is nuke everything. And so what they were able to do is they were actually able to target very specific cancer cells with this nanotechnology. Super, super exciting stuff. We still have quite a long runway yet, but that's one of those technologies like quantum computing and others that is just waiting for its breakout moment. Last trend is ubiquitous infrastructure. Finally, we're getting to a point where we don't have to really worry about essentially running out of compute power. Those questions are starting to erode away. Part of that is, naturally occurring with things like cloud computing, but also, as I mentioned earlier, with technologies like quantum computing, it's really allowing us to have this endless compute. Now, keep in mind, quantum's very specific to a certain set of workloads. We will still have classical computing, and that's where you see, technologies like deep neural nets, ASIC technology, which is essentially custom silicon that is built specifically for AI workloads. And so today you hear a lot in the press and other trade publications around CPUs and GPUs. Um, CPUs and GPUs are fairly general purpose. CPUs are general purpose as far as computing workload, and GPUs are fairly generic across graphical processing workloads. But really, where these custom silicon ASIC technologies come in is, again, a great example is Apple has made investments in custom silicon for biometrics, for augmented reality. Google has done the same thing with their TPU. Many other companies, actually, NVIDIA has as well created some custom silicon to be very specific to those workloads. Back in the old days, we used things called field programmable gate arrays, or FPGAs for short, and those are still used. You see Microsoft use FPGAs for the entire Bing infrastructure. You see it used in areas of Microsoft Azure for, especially for the AI workloads that we put on our cloud. We're using a lot of FPGA functionality because it's you can program it for those very, very specific workloads. And so, like I mentioned, quantum computing, it is one of those technologies that's waiting for its breakout moment. We do have very real physics issues. I've talked to a number of quantum computing experts, whether it be at IBM or Microsoft or D-Wave, a variety of different firms. And everyone's got a slightly different approach to how they're thinking about quantum computing, and they've got their trade-offs. But as far as kind of the holy grail, which is general purpose quantum computing in the cloud, we're still 5 or so years away before we see that. Because, to keep it extremely simple and not to get all geeked out and going into a physics conversation, essentially keeping these qubits in a state and width long enough for them to compute what we need them to compute is extremely hard, and it's extremely error prone. And today it's all about preserving an environment that is equivalent to space, and that's hard. And that's really hard to do. So in the interim, there's great news. We're actually using what is referred, the technical term is quantum annealing, to simulate quantum computing. And we're actually seeing, using classical computing architecture, we're seeing a lot of benefits. And so a company called D-Wave is doing a lot of really cool things there. Like I said earlier, quantum is specific to certain workloads, largely AI based. To be very, very honest with you guys, workloads that require a lot of processing of data. And so you see this in research labs, chemistry, smart cities, anywhere where you need to do prediction based things is where you see some really, really good quantum use cases. You're not going to see a quantum computer on your desk or in your pocket. That's just not going to happen for a lot of different reasons. So we covered a lot of technologies. And what I would encourage you guys to think about is, as you're looking at these technologies, this is a tool that I use myself and with my clients, where we start to contextualize those technologies in the terms of our business. And your business could be lots of different things. It could be your corporation, or it could be a consulting business. It could be lots of different things. But essentially take these technologies, these kind of must-watch technologies, and apply them based on the level of criticality they are to your business. And the size of the bubbles is essentially the value potential of those. And we say value potential because we don't know for sure the actual value. And so this is a great bridge into the third and final area, which is essentially the how. And so oftentimes these words, digital transformation, strategy, innovation, they get kind of blurred together a bit. And I wanted to illustrate for all of you that these words have very specific meaning. And if you look at these words, so you look at digital business strategy, that's all about you rationalizing your business and figuring out what you want to be when you grow up. Digital innovation is essentially the open innovation practices that you're going to use to design what the blueprint for your business should look like. And the third is the how. It's, how are we going to do this? What's the roadmap look like? Are we going to have to work in a bimodal way where we've got existing infrastructure running at the same time as the new stuff? Lots of questions. There's change management, people, etc. Lots that goes into that. And so what I've done is I've created a framework that helps people think about this. And so when we start to get our minds wrapped around, what is that strategy? The first step is to really explore what are those disruptive trends. So as you could hear in this presentation, I talked about the trends. Well, what everyone should do is they should keep their eyes open and look at technology trends, social and economic trends, behavioral trends, geopolitical trends, lots of different trends, and understand what that means to their business. And oftentimes we start with just jumping into our strategy and trying to revise that without taking a open innovation approach and really doing some ideation work around what what is the state of possible. Because the last thing you want to do is do what Sears did, do what Blockbuster did, and keep improving a model that has been put on the endangered species list by Netflix or by Amazon. And so you want to make sure that you're able to answer one of the most important questions, which is, what is the I don't know what I don't know answer? And that means, what are those disruptions in the marketplace that you don't know and that you don't know how to deal with? Number two is rationalizing business outcomes. And so you want to be able to take an open innovation based approach. However, you want to do this divergent, convergent type of thinking, meaning that you want to take in all these ideas. You want to ideate around this. You want to understand what that means to your business. You want to build these business scenarios and say, if the Department of Transportation passes autonomous vehicles level 4 and 5 next year, if I'm Ford, what does that mean? Well, that means we need to get busy, or that means we change our investment structure and what we do and how we do it, et cetera. So when we talk about rationalizing business outcomes, that's validating your existing strategy, but also applying all that great trend work to understanding what that means to your business. And a lot of this will be, you're going to have to be pragmatic about it. You're going to have to look at all the different dials around how aggressive you want to be in the marketplace, how well you understand the problem, what's your level of appetite for change within your company. A lot of times the appetite's really low, which means that's going to change how you approach your digital transformation. Another important question is, how wide is the aperture? Our breadth of focus, what does that look like? And also from an execution perspective, what is our innovation culture? Are people going to go for this? Are they going to fight us tooth and nail? Because our approach will have to change. It'll go from a crowdsourced model where we have hackathons with our employees and things along those lines, to a much more deliberate innovation approach where we have a centralized innovation team that is doing this work. And so there's a lot of different perspectives and parameters here that you have to understand. Now, this gets into, as we go to the third stage, this gets into us quantifying the value of these innovations. And so part of this whole rationalized stage is to do what I would refer to in the banking world is a risk adjusted value statement. And what I want to understand is, I want to understand the risk profile of this innovation and how does that map to the value that I'm trying to drive as a company. Keeping in mind that, as we talked about earlier, the model for value has changed. And so there is going to be a certain amount of risk. We have to understand all the different types of risk: the monetary risk, the business risk, the reputational risk, the competitive risk, the operational risk. There's lots of different types of risks, and you'll have different tolerance levels for each one of those different facets of risk. And for certain business areas, those will change. And so understanding that and applying that to your innovation processes are going to be really, really important. One of the common tools to do that is a business capability model. As you can see here, this is an eye chart. This is something that can take many, many months to perfect and hone into what it means. But what you're seeing here is the blueprint of a business. This tells the board of directors exactly what the priorities are for the company, what they're going to focus on, what they're not going to focus on, the risk model, the value model, etc. there are a lot of insights that can be derived just from this one picture. And, as I've worked with clients, I've seen executives print this out and make it a glossy, put it in their binder, and take it meeting to meeting. And as they talk to their leaders, whether they're innovation leaders or not, they use that to second guess, to verify and validate. Wait a second, we agreed that we're focusing on these areas and not these areas. And it allows us to break down the complexity so it's simpler than a lot of kind of hypothetical. And lastly, it's all about creating options-based business transformation roadmaps. And like I said, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the particular future is. Oftentimes, as technology professionals, as innovation professionals, we don't write the checks, and we don't typically go to jail when bad things happen. So we're not the ultimate decision maker. And one of the challenges in the past has been to essentially say, this is your one option only. This is the right thing to do, or this is what you should do. That's the wrong phrase you should use. Instead, come to them with, very simple t-shirt sizing. Here's an ABC option. One option is extremely aggressive. We're going to get this product to market in the next 6 months. We're going to conquer the world. To, well, we're going to dip our toe in the water and we'll just see how it goes. And what you see here with this artifact, you can see the resources change, the cost changes, the expectations change. But also, one of the things that I like to put in here is that last swim lane there, which is, what are the implications if you don't take on this option? And that's usually one of the most used pieces of data that I find executives use, because they want to understand what they're getting into and what they're going to miss out on. Also, knowing that delivering this stuff in an incremental way is extremely important. Don't try to do the big bang approach. You want to kind of create kind of a broad overall strategy and understand directionally, and let it evolve and change over time, so that it is fit for purpose for your company's goals, but also the market at large. And so this template shows a way to express that as far as the different business capability areas, different technologies that will roll out, when we'll do that, and the scoping around that. And lastly, I can't emphasize this enough, the on a page types of deliverables to give to your business leaders. Oftentimes we talk in a language that they don't know. Being able to distill all this complexity down into a single visual that they can understand, that's in their language. As you can see in the top right hand corner, what are the benefits? What are the risks? And being quantifiable about that, and qualifiable, linking back to their KPIs or OKRs, understanding what the roadmap looks like, and having that all on a single page is really important. And so with that, we covered a lot. Hopefully you got something out of this. I do have a shameless plug. I do have a book releasing soon. And if you're interested in learning more about this type of stuff, and especially the digital ecosystem stuff, definitely check out the link there, the first link, where you can subscribe to get updates on all the latest and greatest updates and publish dates and all that great stuff. So that, I'll turn it back to the MC for Q&A.
Lillian.
Yes.
There's a lot of questions for you, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So
What'd I get myself into?
Good stuff.
So we have a total of 8 questions. So hopefully we'll be able to get through those. So our first question is, Scientific American published an editorial today that stated there is about 50% chance we are living in a simulation. Does Microsoft control the simulation? And if so, can I get a discount for attending this?
I given our stock prices and how surprised I am, our market cap, you would think that we are. But unfortunately, we're not, despite the rumors of Bill Gates' involvement in all sorts of shady dealings.
So their second part of their question is really change happens gradually and then all at once. What role can technology play in making democracy work better?
I think the big thing is amplifying everyone's voice. I think that the digital divide is very real. Um, and I think that our leaders should focus more on amplifying the voices of the citizens in our democracy. And there's easy solutions for some things, and there's much harder things that we have to tackle. But the communications technology is there, so that's less of a problem. And we see cities setting up citywide Wi-Fi, whether it's Austin or San Francisco or San Diego. Lots of cities have done this. Uh, but also, you'd be surprised, just general education on how to use technology. I mean, even someone like my mother, I've had to give her an iPad because I can't give her a computer. I'll be on the phone every day, twice on Sunday, helping her figure stuff out. So I think that digital divide, kind of chipping away at that, is really important. And then the second part that's a corollary to that is I feel very strongly, and I want to get into a political conversation, but I think that expressing our voice through voting is extremely important. And I think there's an opportunity for technology to play a much, much larger role in that. And if I can wire millions of dollars with my phone to a foreign country, I should be able to use my phone to cast a vote. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Our second question, what is the most interesting blockchain implementation of blockchain you have experienced to date?
Oh, there's lots of cool implementations. There's some around what's happening in the music industry, around royalties. Probably the most impactful ones are the boring stories. To be very honest with you, blockchain is, outside of cryptocurrency, it is not very sexy. It is there solving a lot of those data problems and reconciliation of data. It's not a super cool technology when it's extremely useful. But I've specifically been involved and have patented things around building health pass applications that can track authoritatively if you've gotten, when a vaccine is available, when you've gotten a vaccine for like COVID and temperature, linking to sensor technology, et cetera. So I've seen it, range from that to being able to track the life cycle of goods like meat or pharmaceuticals, et cetera. There's just so many different types of applications. Anytime where you need to connect businesses together, businesses or people, there's some really cool applications.
Great, thank you for that answer. So our next question is, how do you argue with an algorithm? Prior AI, including iPhone face recognition, showed that AI learning can be flawed, though everyone is using it. While AI can be a wonderful tool, we have seen it used in companies, Amazon firing warehouse workers, and countries like China to exert much more control over people without benefit. So your thoughts about that?
My thoughts is we give more credit to AI than it deserves. We tend to think about the kind of the sci-fi version of AI. We have to realize that the AI algorithm is doing some cool stuff, but it needs to be trained. It needs data, and it needs a human to train it to behave in a certain way. And this is where ethics come in. This is where just simple human error or implicit bias comes in. And so we've seen this in the judicial system, where there were biases that were built into the AI algorithms that shouldn't have been there. I don't think it was maliciously created, but this stuff is created by people, and we're the ones training it. And so we've got a responsibility, especially big companies. That's why Microsoft has invested significantly in ethical AI. And so this is a program not only across Microsoft and how we develop our products, but also we've open sourced a lot of this so that the same frameworks and tools can be used by our competitors, by other companies, et cetera. And so you're absolutely right. You shouldn't necessarily, take the AI. It's kind of a trust but verify type of scenario in a lot of cases, kind of in these early days. But we need to really look at, I would like to see kind of like a nutrition label, like you see on food, but on a AI system that says, here were the steps that we used to protect you from misinformation, bad information, error, etc. And so to be able to show that to people and go, oh, I've now got this level of confidence and trust in this AI algorithm.
Thank you. Our next question. Can you speak a bit about the regulation / oversight aspects of these types of technology?
So it's a wide range of regulations. And what I'll say, generally speaking, our politicians have not caught up with what benefits the technologies can provide. And so generally speaking, whether it's technology or not, usually lawmakers create regulation whenever there's a big problem, whenever there's a disaster, a stock market crash, banks going under, etc. That's usually when the regulations start to come into play, when bad things happen. And so the unfortunate part is, since there isn't a whole lot of proactiveness there, and it's more in the reactive state, it kind of puts us in a bit of a precarious situation with some of these technologies. We had already mentioned AI. I would put the biohacking in that, in the things that are happening in the CRISPR space, where you've got people in their garages doing gene therapy, and arguably editing their own genes. You've got countries that are giving people social scores that are being used in all sorts of different ways. And so there is a lot of questions that are open. And I think that puts even more responsibility on corporations to do the right thing, because this could get away from us. And luckily, we're at a point right now where there's a dozen or two companies that are big enough and have the experience to potentially be, James Bond villain like type of scenario. And even some like, Bezos kind of looks like a Bond villain. But in all seriousness, the ability to execute against that's tough right now, but that time horizon is shrinking. And so we have to be very, very careful. And I think what it requires is us as consumers, us as citizens, to communicate to our to companies and to our lawmakers that we need to get in front of this, and we need to get serious about it.
Thank you. Our next question. As people are becoming more concerned about data privacy, what are you seeing as a shift towards AI at the edge within the industry you have worked with to keep data with the consumer / end user?
Yeah, there's so this is an interesting problem, because some companies have created their entire business model off of your data. So if you look at companies like Google or Facebook, there is a large portion of their monetization model that is predicated on you giving your data to them. And then they use it in kind of that ecosystem that they've created to monetize it. And so what this is doing is it's really challenging the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, on their business model and using your data. So there's that aspect that's going to be tough and challenging. The other areas, we do see positive movement with companies. We see startups that are creating solutions that are, one of those solutions is blockchain based, where essentially it provides a general platform where you as the consumer can say, it's almost kind of a sliding kind of scale or dial, where it says, if you want certain levels of functionality, you have to proactively turn that dial and say, yes, I am okay with giving this data. but also it provides visibility. So let's say, for example, your medical data. You've got your medical data at your local doctor, at a emergency room in Phoenix when you broke your leg on a hiking expedition. 23andMe's got it. There's all these different places that have it. Having a single pane of glass to say, where is my data? Do I want my employer to have access to my data? Yes or no? And I can pull those rights away from those different sources and give people that control. So we do see more and more both startups, but also the technology enabling us to do it. Apple in the consumer space, that's kind of their core value prop. And so with their smart home technology and their phone technologies, it's really all about keeping the data and AI local to your device so you have complete control and that data doesn't get loose. So again, it's based on the business model of the company, and it's going to be an interesting decade, maybe more, around the space as the general public starts to recognize the implications of their data collection and the usage of their data.
Lillian, maybe one more.
Yes. So our last question, I saw social and ethical roadmaps in there. Can you tell us more about that?
So yeah, I mean, that gets into a lot of what we're talking about here. And the conversations that I have with my clients is, let's get in front of these ethical questions. And let's start to do more kind of scenario-based analysis on different pathways we could take with these emerging technologies, and start to answer the question of, even though we could do this, should we do this? And what does that mean? And what this allows you to do is, this is kind of an artifact that allows you to map out the social implications, the ethical implications as well. You can put different dimensions on there, economic or political, etc. But it gives you a canvas to map out what would be the implications of those decisions by mapping, 10, 15, 20 different scenarios to that. And so it's a really, really useful tool to have in your back pocket. So oftentimes it'll be an input to a business strategy conversation or a digital transformation conversation. And then they're used and they kind of live on as things happen in the future. And essentially you've got a game plan. So if one of those scenarios or a variant of that scenario actually comes to fruition, now you can actually say, I've thought through this, and we have a bit of a game plan on how we would react to that. And you're not completely caught off guard and chasing your tail.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for such a great Q&A session with us and taking time to answer all these questions. At this time, I would turn it over to Dean Mikiak.
I'm going to play Dean Mikiak tonight. And Mike, we cannot say thank you. I often will come up with kind of 3 words to summarize a session. And for me, it's just wow, wow, wow. Those were the first 3 words that came. That's actually what I wrote down. This conversation always takes me to my edge, and you've taken me further to my edge than any other conversation I've ever been in around this topic. I mean, I'm so excited about the future. Your mind, your approach, your thinking to this topic is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's encyclopedic and it's wonderful. The other E word for me would be ethics. And I think we saw those questions kind of bubble up throughout that whole question of, just because we can, should we? To your point about, you've watched the documentary, I'm sure, on Netflix, Unnatural Selection, right?
Yep.
Just because we can make these resources available to everyone, should we?
Yeah.
Because there's some pretty interesting things happening around the world. And then the third word that came to mind that started with an E was education. I think congratulations to the people who signed up for this conversation this evening, because I think for every one of us, this is a lifelong process. And Stephen Hill from KPMG, when he spoke in this series, Mike, he used the word clock speed. The clock speed is just increasing. Yeah. And so I think this lifelong learning mindset is just going to be absolutely critical. And as we move into the future, every one of us are going to have to put ourselves in these uncomfortable conversations where we don't necessarily understand everything, but we're in that space constantly. So each time we have the conversation, we understand more and more and more. If we want to stay relevant, if we want to stay on the cutting edge versus the chopping block, so to speak. So, you know, as a thank you, we've made a donation to the Alzheimer's Association in your name. And Mike, thank you. Thank you very, very much for being with us. We just, can we give him some digital round of applause, please? Everyone go down to your reactions. And I'd also love for each one of you to go ahead and put one word into the chat. One word as you reflect on Mike's talk tonight. What's a word that stands out for you? And Mike, we're going to close out by sharing those words with you so that we have a good understanding of kind of how people are leaving this evening. So we have amazing, we have human, we have exciting, we have future, we have explore. Education is key. Elizabeth chose to do 3 words, not just one. We have insightful, relevant. You've really, really helped us understand this topic in a better way. And Mike, for that, we are very, very thankful. So have a great evening, everybody. Take care. Be well.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Transformational synthesizing, amazing, awesome. 3-year-old site robots, forward thinking, change, relevant. They're all there. Thank you, everybody. Mike Walker, that was awesome.
Good.
That was awesome. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad.
Josh Laston is in his bunker. He has a question. Josh Laston is a former MBA student of ours. He has a smart home that he has rigged up. I'm sure he's standing in line to ask you a question.
Oh no, I just hadn't got around to closing out, but I'm actually in my home lab. That's where I am. To where I'm actually surrounded by all of my IoT parts. No, I actually did have one question, and it was skipped over for time's sake. So I really am curious specifically around all the AI startups and the chip makers that are coming around. How do you feel about the difference in development that's going to be required for all of these chip makers to make AI work on their platforms?
Yeah, so yeah, I got to be careful here. When I was at Gartner, actually, NVIDIA threatened to sue me for some of the things I wrote about them. Because, you know, I essentially said very similar to what we talked about. They're in the GPU business and have betted big on that. And you can see here recently they're diversifying. But 2 or 3 years ago, I actually said, well, yeah, that's great for deep learning. But for the 70 other AI technologies, it's probably a lot less useful. And obviously, they